Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing. This is your host, Joe Firestone, and this is the In Depth Show. Tonight, we're going to be discussing further results from the election, the recent election, and we're also going to be discussing the implication for the future. Hi, Dolores. Hi, Dale. Please share as much as you can. For some reason, Facebook has changed how its scroll bar works, and I have very little ability to share to multiple groups or persons. As a result, can't even share to too many people using Messenger. It's very frustrating at this point. They're really clamping down. So, more results. Let's start with a summary by Nate Silver. Some hours ago. This is as of 5:33 p.m. today. We're taking a bit of a pause on the live blog. It comes from the 538 website. Let me share that so you can see it too. Sorry. I thought I would share. And so I forgot to share. so there we go. So Nate says where the race stands for now. We're taking a bit of a pause on the live blog till we get more results from Arizona and Georgia. Expected around 9 p.m. ET and potentially in Arizona. Anyway, at 12:30 a.m. ET again, which I don't think will be on at 12:30 a.m. ET, but we are on at 9 p.m. ET. We did get an update at 9:04, and Donald Trump still ahead, 387 to 427 by about 40,000 votes in Georgia, with 95% of the expected vote actually reporting. So what does that mean? Well, we're looking at close to 5 million votes coming in already. So 40,000 votes is something like what, 45,000 votes, okay, let's say. So 45,000 votes times 5, that's still 180,000 votes, 190,000 votes outstanding in Georgia that haven't been counted yet. It is said that those votes are mostly coming. Well, we'll see in reading this update of Nate's, but keep that figure in mind that it looks like there's still, even at this hour, 180,000 uncounted votes in Georgia. And we'll come back to that. So here's where the presidential race stands for most likely Trump win to at least likely Trump win. That's from Nate Silver. North Carolina, Trump leads by 1.4 votes, or about 77,000 votes. But mail ballots can arrive after Election Day in North Carolina, so perhaps 5% of the vote is still outstanding. which in North Carolina is looking like it's close to 80,000 votes. 78,000. I'm sorry. There's a lead Trump has in North Carolina of 78,000. Okay. And 1%, there are 5.5 million votes in North Carolina, a little more than in Georgia. So looks like the 5% of the vote there is, what is it, 55,000 times 5. That's 275,000 votes still outstanding in North Carolina. So 180,000 votes still outstanding in Georgia. 275,000 still outstanding in North Carolina. Okay. And Nate says, the mail vote should be pretty blue in North Carolina, but is it enough to flip the state? Probably not, according to the Upshot's needle. The Upshot is a page that was used by the New York Times to rate the probabilities or chances of either Trump or Biden winning a contest. And their needle gave Biden about a 15% chance in North Carolina before it was frozen. Okay, so they're not keeping track at the Times any longer, and the needle was frozen at a 15% chance. So Nate says, I'd call this one likely Trump, although 15% chances aren't the same as zero, obviously. And he's right about that. With 275,000 outstanding votes, and those votes pretty blue, what's pretty blue? Let's say pretty blue is 70-30. 70% of 200 and 75,000 is, what is it, 27.5. Okay, would be 1%, so 70%. So 70% of the 275,000 would be something like doing the math in my head, okay, is blanking me right now. Okay, 10% is 27,500. So 7 times that seems to be something like, what, 180,000. And 30% of it is probably the rest. And I think I'm being too generous to Trump here. So let's say that's another 90,000. So that means that Biden would pick up 85,000 votes, which would be enough to win in North Carolina if they broke 70-30. So it seems to me, if all this is right, that Biden's chance in North Carolina is a lot better than 15% even now. Even now, if that vote comes in, it's pretty blue. Then there's Georgia. Georgia, Trump leads by 78,000 votes, with around 200,000 votes outstanding. But according to the 9 o'clock update that we have here, as I just said, there's only 40,000 votes that are separating the two here. And I've already pointed out that with about 180,000 votes outstanding, it seems like since the remaining vote, according to Nate, is expected to be very blue, plus some election day votes from the predominantly black precincts in blue counties, it seems like the upshot's needle saying that that's at least a toss-up and perhaps is even a lean Biden, is also conservative. If we're talking 40,000 votes to be made up, and 180,000 is outstanding, and those are very blue districts, what we're talking about there is 80% of the 5% still outstanding. That's about 150,000, I think, somewhere in that particular neighborhood. So it's 150,000 to 30,000. So it would be perfectly possible for Biden to pick up on Trump to net 120,000 votes in Georgia, which would easily make Biden the winner in Georgia. If what Nate is saying here is true, he says we'll know more soon. Let's say toss up, but you could force me into lean Biden if you told me I had to make a pick. Well, when Nate actually wrote that, it was 78,000 votes with around 200,000 votes outstanding. Now, it's roughly, what, is that 40,000 votes? 32,000, no, 32,000 and 45,000 still outstanding after the 9 o'clock report. So that means the margin would have gone down to roughly 77,000 votes outstanding. So that is not that much of a reduction. Still 75,000. I'm sorry, I misquoted. Oh no, I'm looking at North Carolina. That's why. So in Georgia, it's only 40,000 votes. So Biden has reduced the margin to 40,000 votes, and there's still 180,000 votes outstanding. That's very interesting, and it suggests that Biden, with a net of 120,000, could easily make up the 40,000 and go past that and have a majority of 80,000 in Georgia. So off this, Biden's chances are looking pretty good for those final 5% of the vote when they do come in. Okay, Nevada, both parties have 49%, and we're looking at a less than 8,000 margin for Biden, with 86% of the expected vote reporting. Now, as we'll see later, we'll get to where those votes are supposed to be. But let's go to Pennsylvania. As expected, there are far more uncounted votes here than elsewhere, mostly mail votes that should be quite a Democratic leaning, though. There are too many outstanding ballots for us to be in the end game, and we can game out exact scenarios. But in counties that have completed reporting, Biden looks to be hitting the targets he needs. Even with the Trump campaign filing a number of lawsuits, the margin is tightening quickly enough that I think this belongs in a lean Biden category. And I believe that is true, that is accurate. I don't see any further updates for Pennsylvania here, though. In Pennsylvania, last I looked, the Trump margin was down to 300,000 votes. Last time I saw a figure for Pennsylvania, but I can check that out again. But there was still almost 1 million votes outstanding. in Pennsylvania. And most of those were coming from Philly and Pittsburgh and suburbs around those areas, all of which were expected to go very big for Biden. So I would say Pennsylvania is more than a lean towards Biden at this point. Arizona. Nate says, we may need to do a longer post on Arizona later. What's left to count is mostly mail votes that were returned late in the process on Monday or Tuesday. There's some ambiguity about how many ballots this actually is. Edison Research seems to think around 450,000. So Trump would need to win those votes by 21 points to overtake Biden's current 93,000 vote lead. But votes are distributed. Those votes are distributed fairly evenly throughout the state. So since the state, as of now, seems to have gone by 4 or 5 points to Biden, it seems likely that this particular 450,000 votes is not going to give Trump a 21-point lead. Rather, it seems to be, if they're distributed fairly evenly around the state, seems like it's likely to maintain Biden's lead. So he says, wait, outstanding mail votes, shouldn't those be good for Biden as they are in other states? Well, not necessarily, because Republicans have a fairly strong mail voting program in Arizona. This is the key part. The mail ballots that were returned later in the process, the ones yet to be counted, were significantly redder than the ones that came in earlier on, as Democrats sent their votes in early. For instance, the party registration breakdown of the votes that came in Monday and Tuesday was 23% Democratic, 44% for Republicans, 33% independent or other parties. That is to say, a 21-point edge, which would put Trump on track to tie things up. But here's the bad news for Trump. Party registration may be a misleading indicator in Arizona. The state has a lot of ancestral Republicans who have now turned into swing voters. Biden also had a big lead among independents in polls. And earlier batches of mail ballots were considerably stronger for Biden than party registration alone would suggest. So probably these ballots are going to come in more for Trump than for Biden, but not as strongly as he needs. So that sounds to me like it's very cogent reasoning in this instance. It also suggests that Biden is going to maintain his lead, that maybe Trump will have a net of 5 to 10% more than Biden on these 450,000 ballots. But that's not going to be enough to make up the lead that Biden now has there. There's also the fact that 2 other news organizations, the Associated Press and Fox News, have called the state for Biden. I'd assume they looked into this more than I have, so that shifts my priors a bit. But you never know, and you do get incorrect calls occasionally. Overall, I'd say this is likely Biden, but I don't think the state should have been called yet. Okay, so what Nate is saying here is that these calls by the networks, in other words, when they make a projection, they're incorrect only occasionally. In other words, they're not incorrect as often as polling is incorrect, as a polling projection is incorrect. So he says, overall, I'd say this is likely Biden, and I don't think the state should have been called yet. So I repeat that. Now, here's Nevada. This one's a bit more straightforward. Biden leads by only 0.6%, or about 7,500 votes. That's what we just saw in the update. What's remaining should be pretty good for him. It's all mail-in ballots that were either received late in the process or that are still coming in. At Nevada, mail ballots can be received by November 10th, provided they're postmarked by Election Day. The mail ballots were quite blue in Nevada, by party registration, much more so than in Arizona, including votes that arrived relatively late in the process. So this is a likely Biden state. Wisconsin, there Biden has a 20,000 vote lead. Everything is supposed to be in Wisconsin. So Biden is the apparent winner per ABC News. And they're probably projecting it by now. But maybe not. Oh, Biden was projected 7 hours ago in Wisconsin. And of course, in Michigan, we know Biden was projected maybe 5 hours ago in Michigan, because Biden caught up in Michigan, went 1.2 points ahead as of November 4th at 5:25 p.m. Jeffrey Skelly on this blog points out that Biden's lead in Michigan has grown to 1.2 points, or about 67,000 votes. And it hasn't stopped. The counting continues. The count is coming from Wayne County. It's coming from Oakland County. While some of it is coming from the home of the Reagan Democrat in the Macomb County suburbs, but Biden has a nearly identical lead to Clinton's margin in Wayne County, which is 37 points, and he only trailed by 8 points, okay, in Macomb County. So there's a net gain for Biden there, a vote for vote, of 29 points. But not only is there a net gain of 29 points, it's also true there are many more votes coming out of Wayne County right now. So that lead of Biden's is going to increase. It may go as high as 100,000 in Michigan before we're through. No ambiguity at all. If I remember correctly, Hillary Clinton lost Michigan to Donald Trump by 10,000 votes in 2016. So Biden evidently has turned that around, and most probably will end up performing better by 110,000 votes than Hillary Clinton did, okay, in Michigan. So let us look at a map at this point. Let me see, this is the right map? No. Is that the right map? Let me get my damn map here. Here's my damn map. Here we go. Let's make sure that you're seeing that. Evidently not yet. Okay, so I've marked off in blue what my choices are here. In line with the reasoning I just gave you, I figure Arizona is going to go to to Biden, and also Nevada is going to go to Biden. I've not decided on Georgia yet. I've not decided on North Carolina yet. I'm keeping them out of the calculation. It's interesting to see that this produces 291 electoral votes for Biden and 213 electoral votes for Trump. This is while assuming that North Carolina and Georgia still stay in Trump's column. That increases Trump to 244 electoral votes. If we figure Georgia goes to Biden, which is the more likely of the two, evidently, then we're looking at 307 for Biden and 228 for Trump. If North Carolina goes for Biden, we have 306 for Biden. And 229 for Trump. And if both those states go for Biden, we have 322 for Biden and 213 for Trump. So these are some possibilities that exist, at this point. Now, some people may still consider that Pennsylvania is a possibility for Trump. If Pennsylvania went for Trump, it would bring Biden down to 302 and Trump up to 233. But Pennsylvania would be outnumbered by North Carolina and by Georgia if they went for Biden. Where does Pennsylvania stand now? Because we're still waiting for further upticks in the Pennsylvania voting. Let's see where Pennsylvania stands now. Let's see if we can get a late update from Politico. This is the Politico site. Pennsylvania's down at the bottom, so I have to do a lot of scrolling to get to it. Donald Trump is still leading Pennsylvania, but only 89% of the expected vote is in, and Trump's lead has now shrunk to 185,000. Keeps getting smaller and smaller. There's still a lot of outstanding votes in Allegheny County around Pittsburgh. You can see so far the vote there is 58.9% for Biden to 40% for Trump, 92.7% of the precincts in. That's a very populous county. We're looking already at something like 458,000 votes in that particular county. In Philadelphia County, we're looking at, at Chester County, we're looking at 56 to 42 for Biden, with 86.5% of the precincts in. Delaware County, with 83.4% of the precincts in, we're looking at 61.2 for Biden, 37.9 for Trump thus far. In Philadelphia County, we're looking at, with only 72.2% of the precincts in, Biden has almost 80% of the vote. There's a lot more of the vote to come in, okay, in Philadelphia County. It looks like 450,000, was it 562,000? Looks like another 200,000 votes are likely to come into that particular county. That alone is going to give Biden the win. If it comes in at 80%, as the rest of the county has, and it's 200,000 votes, we're looking at Biden picking up 160,000 right there. And there's enough other votes in the other counties still ready to come in that suggest that this race is going to Biden by a wide margin. In Montgomery County, there have already been 477,000 votes, 7% of the precincts still to report. Biden has another wide lead there. Northampton County is much closer, but Biden does have a majority there. That's not going to turn things in Trump's favor. Lackawanna County, he has a lead in Lackawanna County too. That's not going to turn things, and there aren't that many votes left in that county anyway. In Center County, Biden has a small lead over Trump. That's not going to turn anything. Doesn't have many votes anyway, compared to some of these other counties. And that's it. That's it with respect to outstanding votes. Okay, in Erie County, Trump has a lead, but 82.6% of the precincts are in, and there aren't that many votes in that county compared to Allegheny. It's roughly similar to Dauphin, but it's not similar to the counties around Philly. So we can project from these figures that Pennsylvania, it's not just likely, it's going to be called for Biden soon when we get an updated vote from these particular figures. I mean, look at that. Only 187,000 votes to make up left. All those votes outstanding from heavily Democratic areas. Now, Biden wins Pennsylvania. They can project it now. It's in the bag now. We'll get other, the site is updating now. Maybe we'll get an update here. Let's check it out. Politico site updates in real time. Let's wait a minute until they finish updating. And by the way, Democrats have 204 seats in the House so far, and Republicans have 190. There are still 41 seats to be decided at this point. Looks like the Democrats are going to have a majority in the House, but it might be a little smaller than coming out of 2018, which would be only right because they failed to deliver very much, especially when it came to putting the Republicans on the spot. So the Senate is now tied at 48-48. It looks like Gary Peters in Michigan will survive because of those Wayne County votes that not only came in for Biden, they came in for Gary Peters, who was threatened, okay, in Michigan. So let's see if we got any further updates. Not still updating, but we didn't get any further updates in Pennsylvania. Maybe we won't get any until tomorrow or later tonight. I don't know. Let's see if 538 received any recent updates on the blog. Michigan, Nevada. This was last updated a minute ago. So it's still roughly 40,000 in Georgia for Biden to pick up. And roughly, looks like 70,000 for Biden to pick up in North Carolina. Both very doable. Still very, very doable. So, in my estimation, Trump is done. Susan Collins in Maine, unfortunately, has beaten Sarah Gideon. Apparently, 17% of the vote is still out there. But Susan Collins has a 7-point lead, and she has Sarah Gideon has conceded to her. I think she made a mistake in conceding so early because Biden has a big lead in Maine at this point. And I'm not sure Sarah Gideon can conclude that she is all done in Maine. But that's a separate issue. And what are we getting here? They're giving, ABC News is currently giving Biden 253 and Trump 214. They're holding Nevada out, okay, and Arizona out. If they added them, that would be 17 points, and Trump and Biden would be at 270 points, okay, right there, without Pennsylvania, without North Carolina, without Georgia. Okay, and Biden, of course, probably has the best chance in Pennsylvania, but he has chances in North Carolina and Georgia too. And it looks to me like he has Arizona and also Nevada locked down. So it's interesting to consider how much were the polls off, because everybody is saying the polls are off. And I will consider that here. Let me share something else. my graphic from yesterday. These are the states I considered the swing states. As of yesterday, I didn't consider Arizona or Nevada swing states, even though it looks close and others consider them to be swing states. I thought Biden was far enough ahead in each of them to withstand polling error, and that he would win in each of them. And I think my judgment there is being borne out. So I specified 7 swing states. In those swing states, it appeared Biden had a 1.9 margin in North Carolina, a 1.2 margin in Georgia. This was according to the polls. 2.5 margin in Florida. It appeared Trump was ahead by Biden was behind by minus 0.8 in Ohio, so I gave that to Trump. It appeared that Biden was ahead by 4.7 in Pennsylvania, so I was projecting that for Biden. And it appeared Trump was ahead by 1.1 in Texas, so I gave that to Trump, and ahead by 1.3 in Iowa, okay, and I gave that to Trump. Okay? So, these were based on final polls, where the final polls stood in these particular states. So it seems like Iowa and Texas, the margins of Trump's win were way underestimated by the polls there. In Florida, the polls were not only off in terms of the margin of victory, but they were off in the direction of victory too, since Trump appears to be gaining a handy victory in Florida. Ohio, also Trump now has a larger victory in Ohio than 0.8, though it's supposedly tightening, okay, in Ohio now. Not so much that Trump is going to lose, but it will be by a margin closer to the 0.8 that was envisioned here. So, what about the 4.7 in Pennsylvania? Well, Biden's going to overtake Trump. The question is, by how many thousands of votes he overtakes Trump. And then we have to compute, okay, the percentage. It looks like it's going to be more like a 1 or 2% majority for Biden, not the 4.7 majority. So it looks like the polls, the average of the polls was off in Pennsylvania by 2.7, but not off enough to give a victory to Donald Trump. We don't know where things are going to come out in North Carolina and Georgia yet, as I try to demonstrate. It may be those original poll estimates for Georgia and for North Carolina will prove to be correct. We have to wait and see to find that out. Those results are not in yet. So those are my latest results. And I'm now going to talk about the future. And I'll talk about the future with you. It looks like the overall election has given to the Democrats maybe a net gain of 1 thus far in terms of the Senate. Only one. Cory Gardner lost in Colorado, and Martha McSally lost in Arizona, giving the Democrats a gain of 2 seats, but they lost Doug Jones's seat, in Alabama. But Doug Jones was a very conservative Democrat anyway. Even Hickenlooper is more progressive than he is, and Mark Kelly is also more progressive than he is. So I think the Democrats have a small gain in the progressiveness of their senators in gaining a single senator. Nothing to write home about. There are 2 other possible gains. We don't know what the final result in the Georgia Senate race that Jon Ossoff is running against Perdue in. Perdue looked for a long time like he had a lead of maybe something like 50.3% to 49%, if I recall correctly. Let's see if we can get any quick figures from here. Also, Tom Tillis had a lead of almost 100,000 over Cal Cunningham in North Carolina. The 100,000 would be hard for Cunningham to make up, I think, based on what's gone before. But still, there's 6% of the vote outstanding there. And it's the blue vote that's evidently coming in, so maybe it's still possible for Cunningham to win. Maybe premature to count him out yet. There was a recent call for Gary Peters, in Michigan. I was expecting that from the Wayne County vote. He now is 60,000 votes ahead, basically running along with Joe Biden. Okay, I don't know what's going on in the Senate, exactly, but in the Senate race for Georgia, I don't have the exact figure here. I could look it up. But there's a slim lead for Perdue. The issue is whether Perdue falls below 50% as these Georgia results continue to come in. Remember, they're coming in from Fulton County, also DeKalb County, and let's see. They're waiting for that drop, from Arizona. Just got a large batch of votes, from Maricopa County, Arizona, favoring Trump, who's 2.8 points behind in the statewide vote there. New Maricopa results went about 44,000 to Trump and 30,000 to Biden. So Trump picked up 14,000 votes in Arizona from the large batch, of votes. There were 74,000 votes that came in then. So that's interesting. Those were last updated, but even after the update, Mark Kelly is still 130,000 ahead, okay, of Martha McSally. So it looks like Mark Kelly has got it, certainly. And Dan Sullivan is ahead of his Democratic opponent, who's the doctor up there, Al Gross. Okay. Okay, so right now, Perdue is leading Jon Ossoff by 50 to 47. But it's far from clear if Perdue will win the 50% of the vote, which is required to avoid a runoff on January 5th. If he fails to do that in Georgia, then there's going to be that runoff, and then there's the Warnock and Loeffler runoff on January 5th, too. So the Democrats, theoretically, would have a chance to gain 2 Senate seats in Georgia on the 5th, but it will be very hard, because if there's no presidential race to pull people, that state is certainly still a Republican state. So the Republicans would be favored in in that particular contest. Now, maybe the Democrats can get one because Kelly Loeffler would now be directly running against Raphael Warnock, and Warnock is going to pin her to the wall for corruption. Jon Ossoff has been attempting to do that with Perdue, okay, in the regular election. And he did pin him to the wall very clearly, okay, in a debate down there, but it didn't persuade enough people to go against Perdue. Now, maybe Perdue had enough votes already banked to fend off a late run, okay, by Ossoff, because that debate came late in the campaign. So maybe Ossoff will have a better chance of winning the runoff. We'll have to see. We just don't know what the atmosphere is going to be around that. The atmosphere could change. Why? Because Republicans, there's still the period from now until January 5th. It's 2 months. COVID is running wild. People are dying in large numbers again. Cases are occurring in large numbers again. The administration is doing nothing. The administration and the Senate and the House have done nothing with respect to economic relief from COVID. If nothing is done until January 5th, are the people of Georgia going to have an incentive to kick out the 2 Republicans and get some Democrats in there who might come close to giving a majority in the Senate to Democrats? I mean, they might want to do that. They might want to see to it that that Mitch McConnell is not the majority leader in place to block what Joe Biden could perhaps do to make things better for people. That's something these Democrats can run on, because for them, the contest is not over. The next 2 months is not after politics. It's still politics. And they can run hard. So there's still a possibility for the Democrats to pick up 2 seats in Georgia. I don't think it's a good possibility because, after all, it's still a leaning Republican state. I don't think Democrats have caught up there yet. But we'll see. These 2 Republican candidates are very bad candidates, both of them. In head-to-head matchups, 2 months from now, with 2 months more of terrible news for people, they result in their getting beaten. It would be another way to repudiate what the Republicans are doing. That's happened before. Okay, it can happen again. So generally, that's the Senate situation. If the Senate, if Democrats got 3 seats and Biden hung in there to win the presidency, then Harris would be the tiebreaker vote, okay, in the Senate. So maybe the Democrats can still gain control in there. But the news generally is not good. Okay, it is not good. So Perry Bacon says here 4 races are unresolved. He mentions Cal Cunningham and Dan Sullivan, okay, in Alaska. Last I looked, Dan Sullivan had a big lead over Al Gross. We'll have to look again and check that one out. Steve Bullock was beaten in the Montana race. I was surprised at that. I thought he was strong enough to win. He came close, but I think he lost by about 4 or 5 points. In Montana, they decided to stay with their Republican senator. Maybe they haven't lost quite enough people to COVID yet. Who knows? But of course, they are certainly a Republican state. So statewide, usually Democrats have a pretty good chance. So let's look at Arizona. Biden currently leads there by 3.4 points, but there are around 600,000 ballots left to be counted statewide, according to ABC News. About 400 of these are in Maricopa County, 250,000 of which were cast this weekend. That's notable because while mail ballots often favor Democrats, that's not the case in Arizona, which has a long history of voting by mail. Trump has already eaten to Biden's lead there in the last 24 hours, although 2 outlets, Fox News and the AP, have called the race, okay, for Biden. Trump just picked up 14,000 votes there, but Biden leads by a good deal more than that, and the question is whether, even with the 600,000 ballots still be open, it'll be possible for Trump to close the gap, but we're going to find out about that soon. So hadn't counted on new results coming back in. 44,000 votes. That's out of the 600,000, I guess, because that came later. Trump gained 14,000, but the 600,000 votes are now down to roughly 550,000 votes. So we'll see. So Trump is now 2.8 points behind in the statewide vote there. There were 13 new posts. Let's keep up with that. So Trump needs 59% of all of the outstanding votes statewide. Would be just enough to put him over the top. However, we don't really know just how the remaining votes will trend, says Jeffrey Skelly. So that's the story there. There are between 26,000 and 34,000 early ballots left to count in Pima County. Pima County uses an estimated range rather than an estimated number for early ballots to allow for any discrepancies in the ballot total once verification and counting is completed. Between 26,000 and 34,000 early ballots, and will be updating daily as it makes its way through counting these and verifying An additional 18,300 provisional ballots, which can take longer than a normal tabulation. Pima County is important because while it doesn't have nearly as many ballots as Maricopa County, it's the second biggest county in the state and also is more Democratic leaning than Maricopa. So far, Biden leads by about 4 points in Maricopa, but has a 21-point lead in Pima, according to ABC News. Where do things stand in Pennsylvania? As expected, Trump's advantage has continued to shrink throughout the day. It's hard to sync up the different sources of data precisely. In other words, the state is reporting one thing, but Philadelphia has its own website and is reporting something else, which eventually will be transmitted up to the state. That when the Trump gap was around 300,000 votes, there were about 900,000 mail ballots left to be counted, and Biden has been winning well above 70% of the mail-in ballots. Now, the gap between the two candidates seems to have narrowed further to just under 200,000, and Philadelphia alone has more than 100,000 outstanding mail-in ballots to count. In general, across the counties that are almost entirely counted, Biden is improving on Clinton's margin by 1.7 percentage points. But I suspect Biden won't end up with as big a raw vote lead in Philadelphia as Clinton had. Well, that's interesting. One of the side effects of that latest drop is that Republican David Schweikert has pulled ahead of Democrat Hero Tiperneni in Arizona's 6th congressional district by about 0.8 points, with about 84% of the expected vote in. Hero Tiperneni is a Biden candidate, essentially a centrist, who would not go for Medicare for all and would not go for the Green New Deal. As Aaron mentioned, we just got a batch of about 74,000 in Maricopa County votes that split 59 to 41 for Trump. This narrowed Biden's statewide lead to 79,000 votes. Closed that gap with about 418,000 ballots left to count statewide. Trump would have to win the remaining ballots 59 to 41. One silver lining for Biden, though, a fair number of those remaining 418,000 ballots are in Pima County, which is bluer than is Maricopa County. Yes, but there are not enough votes in Pima to make more than a small difference in that. But still, that could end up being a margin of victory for Biden. Nate says, I don't know, I guess I'd say Biden will win Arizona if he forced me to pick, but I sure as heck don't think the state should have been called by anyone, and I think the calls that were previously made should be retracted now. One question as the Trump campaign tries to start weighing in on Pennsylvania's ballot receipt deadline at the Supreme Court is how much those late arriving ballots could matter. Well, we're finally trying to get some answers. Apparently, 525 late ballots arrived in Allegheny County today, a handful of which either won't be counted or face an uncertain fate. Obviously, that's just one county in just one day, but it's not looking like a big, decisive deluge of ballots right now. So, it doesn't look like this is going to be that big an issue in Pennsylvania. I continue to be confused about New York Times estimated vote numbers in Philadelphia, which indicate that only about 70% of the expected votes are in. That would imply turnout was substantially higher than the levels I'm seeing from the Philadelphia city commissioners. So that's a discrepancy that will have to be resolved one way or another. And Republicans are doing much better than expected in the House. They have won at least 18 of 27 House races, rated toss-ups by the Cook report, along with 4 lean Democratic races and 1 likely Democratic race. The Arizona 6th race that Jeffrey mentioned is one of the few remaining toss-ups where Democrats still have a chance. Arizona is also the last. Okay, I guess I have to say, I think that Nancy Pelosi's stupid move with respect to coronavirus relief is probably the cause why the Republicans are gaining in House races right now, because the House did not produce for people. Now, I'm not talking about the recent hassles she's had with the Republicans in the White House and the failure to implement anything there. I'm talking about the initial failure of Nancy Pelosi to see to it that big businesses did not get their relief from the COVID crisis until everyone else did. They had to be last in line if they were to get anything at all, because they didn't really need anything. But if they were to be given anything at all, she had to arrange at that time with her control of the House that nothing would be passed unless big business was last online, unless everyone else got taken care of first. I've discussed this enough times to explain what a bonehead play she made. Nate Silver says, fundamentally, the issue for Trump is that while Georgia projects to be very close, and Arizona, at least in my view, also projects to be very close, Biden is way ahead of the pace he needs to overtake Trump in Pennsylvania. If it were 3 toss-ups, that would be one thing. But Biden could wind up winning Pennsylvania fairly comfortably. Yeah, I feel that way too, that Pennsylvania is going to be fairly comfortable for Biden in the end, as more of these votes are counted. I hope Pennsylvania is going to be done by tomorrow. I think it's very possible. But there will continue to be updates here at 5:38, okay, and in other places. So let me get back to my discussion here that I intended to go through. Okay, so what's happened? So the Democrats don't have the Senate. As things stand now, the majority leader of the Senate on January 3rd, when it comes time to make the Senate rules and to decide whether the filibuster is going to be there or not, is still going to be Mitch McConnell, unless the Republicans decide to get rid of Mitch as their leader. They might possibly decide that. I don't know. But if they don't decide it, then Mitch is going to be there on January 3rd to make those rules of the Senate. Now, maybe if the 2 Democrats win when they take office, probably be about January 10th or something like that, they can make a point of order and bring some new rules to the Senate, and we might see something change then. But right now, the way the situation looks is that we still have to get by Mitch McConnell and get by the Republicans. If the Democrats want to do anything, they have to get by them. Now, Biden's disposition, okay, to getting by them is to dealing with them the way he and Obama dealt with them when they grabbed control of the Senate in the 2014 elections. And even to deal with them when the Democrats had control of the Senate before then, they dealt with the senators in a very compromising way, making bipartisan deals that were picking the pockets of working people and middle class people, but that were perfectly fine with the donors. It's one of the worst things about the performance of the Obama-Biden years is that they continually did that. That kind of politics threatens again, with Biden constantly trying to move to the right to get at least a little something out of Mitch McConnell, and then to say, see, am I not great? I got a little something out of Mitch McConnell. That's not going to go here. We have only a limited amount of time to go until climate change catches up with us. We need an aggressive administration in there. We need an aggressive Congress in there to begin to pass the bills that need to be passed to give people what they need and what they want. And the Democrats continue. The Biden campaign never ran that way. They ran in the way of, oh, we're going to be the president of all the people, and we're going to take care of COVID. And they didn't say much else. We're going to improve your health care a little incrementally, building on the Affordable Care Act, the stinky Affordable Care Act that very few people really like and get passionate about, and that do not bring them to the polls. Now we're going to build on that. And look, we got a nice little environment plan, climate plan at about $2 trillion over 10 years, over 4 years, so roughly $500 billion a year, which certainly is not cutting the mustard. Here I am accusing Biden of not being able to cut the mustard. I shouldn't be saying that. But we need him to be able to cut the mustard on various bills. We need him to pass a program like the Bernie platform. And we need to push him from day one to do that. And we have to expect that now, without control of the Senate, he's going to push back. And he's going to say, well, we don't have control of the Senate. We can only do what we can do. And we can only do what Mitch is going to agree to. We're sorry about that, but Mitch has to agree. Mitch has to agree or we're not going to get anything through. So if you want anything through at all, I don't want anything through at all. I mean, of course, I want a stimulus bill through. But I suspect Biden can force a stimulus bill through by putting in an aggressive stimulus bill, getting quickly passed by the House, and then shouting and screaming at Mitch that if he doesn't put through the stimulus bill, then the depression that's curling America's hair is going to be on him and on the Republicans. That's what he has to do. That's what he has to say. And he might get Mitch to move on that, on one stimulus bill, if a vote or two is needed. At least allow the Republicans to vote free, so those who might want to vote for such a bill would be able to vote for such a bill. That could happen. That might happen. After that, though, Mitch will do nothing further except to try to harry Biden and treat Biden the same way he treated Obama in order to make the Biden administration an utter failure and to begin to recapture what he considers to be Republican ground in the election of 2022. The only way for Biden to counter that is not to work towards compromising. He's not going to win in 2022 by compromising with the Republicans. He'll win in 2022 by cornering the Republicans and blaming them for not voting for things the American people need, and by constantly appealing to the American people to give me a Senate I can work with. Give me a Senate I can work with. I need a Democratic Senate, a big Democratic Senate that I can work with. If you really want Medicare for all, if you really want a Green New Deal, and yes, Biden is going to have to give up the bullshit about Medicare for all and free college and all the other tropes that he's got if he wants to have a successful presidency. Because he's got to get people out in 2022 to turn this thing around. There isn't any time left. Now, of course, Biden knows there's not any time left for him because he's old. I know there's not that much time left for me because I'm old. I know there's not that much time left for Nancy Pelosi because she's old. They're all old. But you can be old and you can look to the future. Anyway, most of us have children and grandchildren after all. And we want things to be all right for them. And we care strongly about that. And I think we can be ready to turn out these old people in the government who are holding things back with stupid ideas. Yes, I know the Cubans in Miami-Dade. I know they went heavily to Trump because he scared them about socialism. But guess what? If Bernie had been down there campaigning and explaining what he meant by socialism, if he said, look, socialism is just a word. It's just a word. Here's what that word means to me, what democratic socialism means to me. It means democracy, first of all. It means fair votes for everybody. It means a much greater degree of equality that we have now so people are not suffering. It means Medicare for all. It means free college for all. It means if he outlined his whole platform and he said, that's what I mean by democratic socialism. Now, maybe you don't agree with the word, but tell me, do you like this platform? Are you for this platform? Bernie could campaign that way. I don't know if Biden has it in him to campaign that way, but Bernie could campaign that way. And he could sell people on what he meant by socialism. And he could say, don't be afraid of the word. This isn't Castro in Cuba. This isn't Maduro in Venezuela. This is not what was going on in Russia. This is more like Denmark and Sweden, which are perfectly fine places. Have you ever been there? They're nice places. People are happy. Things are working out well. They live longer than we do. Bernie could go down there and campaign that way, and he could have gotten by the socialism crap so people wouldn't be scared of it. I mean, he got by it in Iowa. He got by those charges in other states. He could have gotten by it among the Cubans in Florida also. Could have gone down there with Chuck Rocha at his side and other Hispanics, and he could have explained that to Cubans. What did Biden do instead? He sent down Ana Navarro, a Republican, for God's sakes, to talk to the Cubans about why it would be so great for them to vote for Biden. No wonder they predominantly voted for Trump. No wonder they upset the polling predictions for Florida. That was a bonehead play by Trump. Incidentally, the Democratic establishment has made continual bonehead plays. $88 million to Amy McGrath in Kentucky. Now, maybe if they had given the $88 million to Charlie Booker, they would have gotten Mitch out of there. Huh? I mean, what did Charlie Booker have? 2 million? 44 times less than Amy McGrath had? And he almost beat her. He was within what? 4 points of her, 5 points of her in the primary. He would have used that money well. Then they went into North Carolina. And they gave, I don't know how many millions, 57 million in one quarter to Jamie Harrison. Now, Jamie Harrison's a pretty impressive talker. It's a pretty impressive guy. But for God's sakes, he was a tobacco lobbyist. And policies, what policies did he have? What was he offering people? What was he going to give them? How was he going to improve their lives? It wasn't clear. So Lindsey Graham beat him. Better the Republican you know than the Republican light that you don't know. Who besides that happens to be black, right? In South Carolina. He's got a big base, but it's hard to extend that base into the white community, isn't it? Now, if they had found someone who happened to be black and was also a democratic socialist and could talk things up as a democratic socialist would, maybe that would have been attractive enough to beat by Lindsey Graham. I know, they got to be tired of Lindsey Graham down there. He didn't do that well against Jamie Harrison. He really didn't. But in the end, he beat him with enough of a margin that it wasn't really close. So what did the Democrats do? They probably wasted altogether about 160, 170 million on two candidates for the Senate. Imagine if they had given some of that money to Al Gross up in Alaska, who was running against Dan Sullivan, or Barbara Bollier, who was running against Roger Marshall in Kansas, or M.J. Hagar, who was running against John Cornyn in Texas. Now, she did pretty well in her fundraising, but I'm sure she could have used some of that 170 million or whatever it was on those two turkeys. And guess what? If they had put in another 2 and 3 senators with that money, I mean, how about more money for Bullock in Montana? Then they'd be getting rid of Mitch as majority leader. Be getting ready to get rid of Mitch right now as majority leader without beating him out of his seat. And getting rid of Lindsey Graham as chairman of Judiciary without getting him out of his seat. So, they pulled stupid stuff. What happens if they threw $10 million to Mike Espy in Mississippi? What would have happened then? These people are too old. I say that as a very old person myself. They're too stupid. They're too hidebound in their ideas. And they're too beholden to donors to win. They're losers. They need to change. We need to make them change. How can we do that? I think we can only make them change by building an institution to their left. I think we need that third party now. We need something threatening so they cannot move to the right. whenever they want to move to the right, whenever they want to compromise with the Republicans. We have to make them know that if they hold hands with the Republicans and push some bipartisan piece of crap, that we are going to punish them. We're going to punish them from the left, from another institution. We're going to punish them by taking their seats. By taking their seats. We need that movement for a People's Party. The Democrats need a movement to their left to build a better Democratic Party. Maybe if we had a centrist Democratic Party and we had a Democratic Socialist, the Democratic Party, maybe we could get rid of the Republican Party. Because who wants to vote for people who always represent the plutocrats? So that's what I think about the future. That's what I think should be done for the future. We got to work hard. We got to build that third party. We got to build it fast. We got to support the progressives in the Democratic Party. The squad seems to have gained 4 new members. Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, Mondaire Jones, and Marie Newman. Maybe we'll be lucky and one of the other progressives in toss-up races somewhere will win. Though it didn't look good last night, it didn't look good today for that to happen. Looked like the Democrats were actually going to lose seats in the House. Everybody was figuring, they'll get 10 or 15 more seats. Maybe. At least 5, because due to reapportionment in North Carolina, ordered by a judge, they already were going to get a boost of 2 districts that were likely to go for Democrats. So they'll gain at least 5, everybody thought. Looks like it's the Republicans who are going to gain 5 seats. Who are going to turn 5 seats. Why? Because there was a huge wave for Democrats in 2018. And what did the Democrats do? They labored mightily and they delivered the CARES Act, which took care of the big corporations first and gave a pittance to other people. Okay, folks, I'm going to go to your comments now. But that's what I think about the future. We have to counter the gravitational pull of the Republican right on Joe Biden, which is going to be in line with all of Joe Biden's previous experience, that he will gravitate towards them. We need a powerful magnet to the left, threatening cannibalization of the Democratic Party if he doesn't start pushing. Hi, Gina Marie. Hey, Kay. Hi, Steve. How will the military absentees go? I don't know. A lot of those votes might have been already counted. But I suspect they're not going to go for Trump. I don't think Trump is too popular in the military right now. Hi, friends. Carmen is in fascist book jail again, 30 days, so got to use Avril's phone. Hey, Carmen. Steve says, hi all. Avril says, oh man, got to go get my anxiety cottage cheese snack. And Steve DeVore, glad to see you, says Kay. And I second that motion. Very glad to see you, Steve. How you doing? Steve says, thanks. Not doing so good. Hope you're much better. Well, I'm fine. I hope that you are getting better, though. Sorry to hear you aren't doing well, but still glad to see you. Steve says, getting scared. There's too much physical stuff going on. Kay says, I understand. Hoping for the best for you, though. Alro says, peach is heavenly. Kay says, Steve DeVore, I helped take care of my dad when he had cancer and was sole caretaker of my late hubby when he had it. I truly do understand what you're going through. Avril says, so Herr Fuhrer is starting his stop counting and everybody's cheating propaganda. Yeah, I expect him to do it much before this. I think it's too late for him to do it because they're going to have these states counted now in another day or two. They're going to be all counted. He won't be able to stop the counting except maybe for military absentee ballots that are arriving late. And all the people have to do is say, Trump is stopping votes from the military. Look at this guy. What a traitor to his country. Steve Gunter says, I may just do brunch once. Don't do brunch until COVID's over. Kay says, Ohio never ceases to disappoint. Went red again. Shake my head. My guy I voted for lost, and he's a physicist. Actually one with a real brain that works. Is that the guy I interviewed a couple of years ago who he was a pretty smart guy, but he didn't know anything about Medicare for All, and he needed lessons in it. And he didn't know anything about MMT either, but he needed some lessons in it. Kay says, Senators 47 Dem and 48 GOP. So no, it's now 48-48 because Gary Peters won his race after all. Those Detroit votes straightened it out. And right now it's 48-48 with 4 races outstanding. 1 in North Carolina, 2 in Georgia, and where is the 4th one again? Where's the page? Let's see if we can check those results again. North Carolina presidential results. Still 95%. Nevada. Tom Tillis and Cal Cunningham in North Carolina. Gary Peters just won his race. Oh, I know. It's the Alaska race. Al Gross versus Dan Sullivan up in Alaska. That's the 4th race. So only 4 outstanding races, Kay. That's it. So, I can't believe Collins won. Was her opponent trash? Her opponent was pretty good, but they had the option up there of nominating progressives. There was a guy who ran a couple of years ago against Angus King. His name was Zach by Ringelheim. He was a very, very good candidate, and he was a Bernie progressive. I think if they had run him against Collins, he would have won. But of course, they liked Sarah Gideon. Why? Sarah Gideon makes a nice appearance. She's a good-looking woman. She was the Speaker of the House, in the legislature in the state. Of course, she's a centrist Democrat. She was running on a Biden support type of platform. So, a conventional Democrat. Collins kept at it. She had a fortune in money, of course. It's possible Sarah Gideon needed more money. It's possible some of that money that went to Jamie, or some of the money that went to Amy, if that could have been redirected to Sarah Gideon, maybe she would have won. Collins was bankrolled very, very heavily by those who were grateful for her votes for the Supreme Court. Kay says, no, her opponent was good. Okay, a progressive, but that is Maine, like Ohio, I guess. Sarah Gideon wasn't a progressive. She wasn't for Medicare for all. She wasn't for the Green New Deal. She wasn't for free college. She was a conventional Democrat, Kay. I'm sorry. She was not a progressive. She said she was a progressive. But she was a progressive my butt. And Avril says, McConnell, Pelosi, and COVID-19 spells doom for us. Kay says, if Biden wins, maybe he can save SS and Medicare anyway. That's why I voted for him. He can. I mean, it won't be privatized under Biden. Pretty sure of that. He's not going to fall for that one. Now, he might fall for chain CPI for the elderly. I know at one time he was for that, which was going to have a disastrous effect on Social Security over a few years, over more than a few years, over 10 years or so. Steve Gonzo said it's only like Ohio if they have PB militias, poor boy militias there, planning kidnaps and firing squads over masks, Steve Gonzo says. Alvarado says, are the DNC finally going to get and take a reality check? I don't know. I don't know what can make them take a reality check, except, I mean, even if they had another serious defeat, I mean, that didn't make them take a reality check in 2016. Look at all the legislative seats they've lost in the states, and they still don't make a reality check. Steve says the MSM is dragging them for once. Steve says NBC, Twitter, Trump. Avril says Hulk is back. And NBC, Twitter, Trump has gotten silent. Yeah, he's probably planning something. Or maybe he's gone off the deep end and he's just gone to bed for a while till he can think of something else. Avril says, oh yeah, the post office is in hot water for letting the ballots sit around, but it's too late unless something phenomenal happens. Hot water is not enough. They got to put Louis DeJoy in jail for a federal crime. Nomiki Konst, I want me a nominee for president that treats Republicans the way Democrats treat the progressives. Yeah, I don't know if the Democrats have anybody like that. I was talking with somebody about that today. I was trying to think of who was mean enough to become the majority leader for the senators. If Chuck Schumer was put out, who could the Democrats elect as the majority leader? Who would be tough on the Republicans, nasty, ruthless, like Mitch? Who have they got who could play that role? I don't know. I don't even think Bernie can play that role. I mean, because Bernie doesn't punish people. He always looks at things in a positive way. He always looks for what he can do with people. He never looks towards, that guy crossed me. What can I do to punish him? He never does that. I'm afraid to be the majority leader for the Democrats. If you want to get the Democrats in shape, I think you got to do that. If you're not willing to do that, They're never going to make tough deals with the Republicans. Kay says, love her. Alvaro says, well stated. Romano says, Green Party didn't get their needed percentage that they badly needed either, did they? Oh, no. No, this was a bipolar election. I mean, people didn't want to take the risk. Alvaro said, Hulk is back. Alvaro said, they're rich, their grandparents, their grandkids' well-being is no issue for them. Yeah, but it should be an issue for their voters, don't you think? It's no issue for them. But how about for us? Why was Nancy Pelosi not put out in this election? And Shahed Buttar elected? Because his name was Shahed Buttar? That was maybe one reason. Kay says, yes, I also vote for my kids and grands and great-grands, although none of them seem to get it, except for my daughter, Amber. Steve says, Caitlin Johnstone hourglass with flowing sand at Cato's Electro Musings. Quote, leftists who voted Biden did it with the goal of hopefully later getting a chance to wake America up. Liberals who voted for Biden did it so they can go back to sleep, unquote. Absolutely. Alvaro says, I've always loved the name Amber. I wish my name was Amber Harper, quote unquote. I like how that sounds. Alvaro says. Kay says, her name is Amber, and then her family name, which I insist on for all my kids, is Kay. All my kids have their own first names, but also family names too. Alvaro says, Cori Bush sounds like one of those fire-breathing dragons we so desperately need. Yeah, but she's in the Senate. She's in the House. We got another fire-breathing dragon in the House. So we have AOC and Rashida, Ayanna, Ilhan. They're all fire-breathing dragons. Now we have Cori Bush, and also Jamal Bowman is a fire-breathing dragon. I don't know whether Mondaire Jones is. I don't think Marie Newman is. I don't think she's a fire breather, but she is going to join the squad. Kay says, my older daughter is named after my dad's sister, who was my favorite aunt, Rose, and then my middle name, Anne. Big protest outside of Maricopa County, Arizona. Elections office by Arizona rednecks now. Well, that's interesting. So see if Biden would have worn Bonnie's Trump whooping lucky slippers. He would have swept the election. Maybe he would have swept it if he wore Bernie Sanders slippers. Yes, honey.
Do you think Democrats always cave in to Republicans?
Do I think that Democrats always cave into Republicans? I wouldn't say always, because when I was growing up, Democrats almost never caved into Republicans. Almost never. During the 50s and the 60s. Are you kidding? They first started the compromising crap. They got a new wave of Democrats who were neoliberals who came in the late 70s and the 80s, and then they became nice, sweet people looking for compromise with the Republicans. It actually started, a little earlier than that. In Lyndon Johnson's period also, they felt that they could come to deals with the Republicans, and they did come to some deals. And when a Republican was president, like when Eisenhower was president, instead of trying their best to kick Eisenhower out, they thought they would gain more by being friendly and always compromising. That's when the compromising really started. That's the first time I can really remember that, where they felt they would gain more in the Eisenhower administration if they were always constructive with the Republicans. Well, back then, Eisenhower's Republicans were pretty constructive themselves. So the Democrats did somehow gain that way, and they were in a position to take back the White House and the Congress fully when the 1960s started. During the 1960s, the early part of the 1960s, the Republicans were defeated enough that when they compromised with the Democrats, it didn't stop the Democrats from passing bills like the Civil Rights Bill, the Civil Rights Bills, which really solved some problems at that time. But then it became conventional wisdom that if you were the opposition party, that you always had to behave yourself if you wanted to get back into power. So in the 1970s, the Democrats began to behave themselves. No more nasty senators like Wayne Morse, of Oregon, or the aggressive Senator Humphrey, who during the 1940s was quite a terror, and during the early 1950s. And no more tough guys like Robert Byrd, who sometimes was a very tough guy in getting what he wanted. During the 70s and 80s, you began to get the slick senators who were always reasonable to the Republicans, who never questioned the motives of the Republicans, who never attacked them as class enemies.
Was that when people were told what they could have and couldn't have?
During the neoliberal period, that was when the people in office started to tell the people what we could have and what we couldn't have. Of course, that didn't really get into high gear until the Clintons came into office, where they thought of themselves as the font of all wisdom and therefore qualified, to tell people, you will never get Medicare for all.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they meant to tell us that, in their honest opinion, we could never get enough support in order to get Medicare for all, or whether they were telling us, sending us the message, I'm not going to give you Medicare for all.
She did.
I'm not going to give up on these trade deals. Of course, that was the message we heard then when she said we will never get Medicare for all. The message we heard was, I will never pass that. And so a lot of us said, I will never vote for you for office. Go stick it where the sun don't shine.
I think we ought to
God.
ask the DNC and Biden and tell them all the things that Bernie taught us we should be asking for. And that we ought to do it every month. Every month.
I think that's a good idea from Bonnie. We need to tell them what Bernie taught us to ask for once a month, every month, like clockwork. We need to tell them about the whole platform we want passed from them. And we need to tell them we're going to hold them accountable. And they're going to think to themselves, oh yeah, how are they going to hold us accountable?
Take away
and the way we're going to hold them accountable is we're going to start now building that movement for a people's party so we have an instrument to hold them accountable with. We got to build up the movement for a people's party so that by 2024, they are ready. And by 2022, there are some congressional candidates being fielded by the movement for a people's party. What we need to have is, first, these candidates need to register as Democrats and run in Democratic primaries. And when they lose, then they have to run third party under the banner of the Movement for a People's Party. See, if Biden would have worn Bonnie's Trump whooping lucky slippers, he would have swept the election. Steve said, I said, do brunch once, Joe, to explain how Big Us would have landslided, flipped, supermajority, and basically owned the libs. That's a great idea, Steve, as long as we make them pay for lunch. Brunch, I mean. Avril says, oh yeah, because the orange neck is inciting it. And Steve says, town needs an orange peeler.
Trump was going to hit
Avril
that.
says, Deutsche Bank wants their money from Adolf now.
Trump invited 400
Avril
people.
Mono says, Katie Porter to replace the majority leader. No, Katie Porter's in the House. She has to replace but Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House. Maybe someone ought to put up Katie Porter. Though if we could get her in, the best one would be AOC, of course. But, maybe Pramila Jayapal would do pretty well. She's a smart one, very smart. And I think she's pretty strong, too. But again, she's not in the Senate. Maybe we need to get Ro Khanna into the Senate. There's going to be a seat open. If Biden wins, Harris's seat for the Senate is going to be open. What's the speculation about who Nancy Pelosi's cousin is going to nominate for that one? Avril says, I like Michael Jackson once sang, quote, they don't really care about us. So did he? I don't remember that one. Avril says, oh, I read if there's a tie, the House of Representatives breaks the tie. Yes, but the House of Representatives breaks the tie. Okay. The House votes by state. Each delegation has one vote. Now, even though the Democrats will have a big majority in the House, the most probable outcome of this particular election is that the majority of states, of delegations from states, will be controlled by Republicans, not by Democrats. So even though the Democrats have a majority in the House, in the tie-breaking vote, they would vote for the Republican. They would not vote for the Democrat. So you better hope that there's no 269 to 269 tie, because the likely outcome of that is that Trump would get a second term. Kay says, we don't want that to happen, Avril. It isn't as good as it sounds. And Avril says, yeah, Bernie's brown comfy ass whooping shoes. Remember that? Avril says, what? Kay says, having the House break the tie. And Steve Gonzo says, the MSM wants any conflict, streets, courts, social stocks, anything to drag ratings. Yeah, those money-hungry SOBs. Avril says, but politicians nowadays are corporate-backed and owned, and being in business means being cutthroat, narcissistic, and psychopathic. Didn't used to mean that, but it seems to mean that today. Avril says, yes, kick rocks Hillary. I thought Joe Bid-19, says Steve Gonzo, was a socialist, Mr. Rogers. Steve Gonzo says, no, Joe Bid-46, laugh out loud. Kay says, love movement for a People's Party. And my daughter Devorah says they might not be able to leave if they sign by unity pledges. Devorah, there are such things as unconscionable contracts. Unconscionable contracts. I doubt that those contracts, those particular unity pledges they sign, I doubt that those are enforceable contracts. If they are, they violate the constitutional rights of people who want to run for office. You cannot sign away certain constitutional rights that you have. I believe the right of running for office is one of those constitutional rights you would not be able to sign away. Now, of course, people who sign that with the Democratic Party are always good boys and good girls, and they gave their word, so they're going to keep their word, no matter how much the Democratic Party kicks them around, no matter how unfair the primaries are, no matter how many races are rigged as shown by their failing to match the exit polls. They still won't say, your primary was crooked, so you invalidated your contract with me. I'm no longer bound. I'm running third party. That's the way it's got to be done. Avril says, sorry, got Katie mixed up.
People's parties online.
Katie Porter would be great for Pegosi's position or Jayapal. Yeah, they both would be. So would AOC. But if there is someone else who's elected to her position, it most probably would be Barbara Lee, I think. Because people are going to want somebody who's acceptable to all segments of the party right now, who might be acceptable to all segments of the party, and maybe someone who's also acceptable to Nancy Pelosi. And Barbara Lee has been one of Nancy's mates for years and years and years and years, but she is also acceptable to the squad. So she is likely to be a compromise choice, a sort of caretaker speaker who would give way to a more aggressive person, okay, at a later time. Only trouble is we need an aggressive person right now as the Speaker of the House who would tear the Republicans a new one. That's what we need. Steve says, wow, the sheriffs are giving a sea of red hats. The protesters line up, keeping them at bay. What does that mean? Steve says, apparently they don't realize 50% inside counting are Republicans. Yeah. Avro says, that's why goody two-shoes suck. They're saps. So in other words, there are protesters out there in Maricopa County trying to fix the count against Biden, thinking that if they block things in Arizona, Trump is going to be elected president, right? They think Arizona is the margin, right? Let them try and go to Philadelphia. See how quickly they land in jail. Avril says, that's why goody two-shoes suck. They're saps. Avril says, Barbara Lee, jack of all trades, just probably too complacent. No, she's not complacent. She's got moral values. About some things, she's got a total spine. I think she might turn out to be very good, but we'd have to see. She'd be better than Pelosi anyway. Okay, folks, it's 11 o'clock. I'm going to make one more check of the results to see if anything else has come in. And then I think I'm going to say goodnight, if it's okay with you guys. I know we probably got a bunch of other posts updated 10:30 p.m. Meanwhile, Georgia, says Sarah Frostenson. Well, let me go back to where I left off. No, there is some news. There is some news that arrived later. Nate Silver says, fundamentally, the issue for Trump is that while Georgia projects to be very close, okay, and Arizona, at least in my view, projects, oh, I read this already, this one. Okay. So then at 10:13, Nate Silver says, Trump's lead in Georgia is now down to 31,748 per Decision Desk HQ. So Trump's lead in Georgia is now becoming slim. Slim. Did they have Georgia up here? Slim. Yes. Now down to 35,000 votes. By the way, there's still 5% to be reported, according to this last updated November 4th, at 11:04, with 5% still out. It's now closed to 31,000. That's right. That's important. That's close. Jeffrey Skelly says, as we wait for more returns from Well Anywhere, I took a look at the Pennsylvania Department of State website's tracker of outstanding mail ballots to see where things stand in that pivotal state. Turns out there are about 763,000 total mail ballots left to count in the state, which is a lot. At the moment, Trump leads Biden by about 187,000 votes in Pennsylvania, which translates to 3 percentage points. Now, I don't know how many of those 763,000 votes might not be counted for various reasons, but if we just rounded down to 750,000 outstanding ballots, Biden would have to win 62% or so to have a threadbare lead. But the challenge for Trump is that because mail ballots tilt Democratic, Biden has been winning recent new tranches of mail ballots by margins far larger than that. It's true that some of those outstanding votes are from Republican areas of the state, but a quarter of them come from Philadelphia, including 120,000 from Philadelphia proper, where those votes will be very Democratic. Very, very Democratic is 80% on the Democratic. Okay, so roughly 100,000 out of those 120,000 are going to be Democratic. So Biden is going to pick up 80,000 votes right there. There are also 85,000 mail ballots left to count for Democratic leading Allegheny County and Lehigh County, Allentown. Point is, there may well be enough for Biden to overcome Trump's lead. I think there are. I also think that the Pennsylvania Department of State may not be the proper website to look at what the outstanding votes are in Philadelphia. You may have to look at Philadelphia's own website, Jeffrey Skelly. Nate Silver says results aren't final, but Biden's lead in Nebraska's 2nd district is really fairly big, 6.6 points, which suggests it will be a thorn in the side of the Republicans going forward. Matt Grossman said at 10:25, a decision desk also shows Purdue at 50.15% in Georgia's remaining Senate race, which requires a candidate to get a majority to avoid a runoff election in January. If he falls below 50 as more Democratic votes come in, we would be in for runoff elections for 2 Senate seats in January, both in Georgia. With Republicans currently leading in North Carolina and Alaska, that might offer Democrats their last chance at Senate control. Winning those 2 seats alongside the Biden presidency could make the Senate tied with the vice president serving as a tie-breaking vote. That prospect would lead to a lot of political focus on Georgia for the next 2 months. It should lead to a lot of political focus on Mitch McConnell and what a disaster it would be if he became the majority leader again. The guy blocking stimulus. The guy blocking stimulus. Hit him with that. Hit him with that. Hit him with that. Hit the 2 Georgia candidates with that. Meanwhile, Georgia, which has turned out to be really competitive, is still at 95% of the expected vote reporting. but almost all of Georgia's counties where the vote is outstanding are blue counties, like Fulton, Atlanta. However, according to Georgia election officials, as of 8:30 p.m. ET, Biden needs to win 64% of the outstanding vote to overtake Trump. That might prove a tall order, but this is definitely the closest toss-up state we've seen in this presidential election compared to, say, Ohio, okay, and Iowa. Well, okay, I don't believe that announcement by the Georgia person, because if 5% of expected vote reporting is still in, we're at 4.8 votes as of now, 4.8 million votes. 1% of that is 48,000. So I make it, I'm going to round off to 50,000. That means roughly about 240,000 votes are still outstanding in Georgia, and Joe Biden only has to make up, 31,000 votes. Maybe 32,000 votes at this point, with 250,000 votes, 240,000 votes outstanding. If Joe Biden gets 60% of those votes, he's going to have about 140,000 votes. $140,000 to Trump's 100,000. That's 40,000 votes. So I don't know if 64% are necessary. It may be at only 64%, okay, unnecessary of the outstanding vote. And this is as of now. As of now. As of now. Okay. So, Kay says, wow, huge crowd now outside the Maricopa County Elections Office. Georgia on My Mind by Ray Charles, and I can't wait till we're singing Hit the Road, Jack, to Agolf. Steve Gonzo says, Magarona and Cheesy. Steve Gonzo says 47-48. No, it's 48-48, folks. It's 48-48. House Democrat 236 to 209 Republicans. Can't be. There are only 435 votes in the House, people. 435 votes. 236 to 209 is 445 votes. That's 10 more votes than there are in the House, Steve Gonzo. Senate 47-49, no, 48-48. Oliver says, there are a lot of revolutionaries around Atlanta, Decatur. Kay says, thank you all for a great discussion again. I love you all. We love you too, Kay. Kay says, I'm already yawning too. Laugh out loud. Can't get adjusted to the insane time change. Protest against Rump in D.C. now, too. Barbara Lee, jack of all trades, is probably too complacent. That's it, folks. I'm saying good night. I'll see you tomorrow when hopefully the elections will be over and I can get back to talking about some other things. Good night. Ohio travel bans 7 MAGA states. Hey, Magarona, Magarona. Ohio travel banned other states. DT still dog whistling Civil War to distract while he's